He was not the headline. He was never the headline. In a week where the Cleveland Browns signed a two-time Pro Bowl guard for $49.5 million and acquired a former two-time All-Pro center the day Green Bay declared him physically unable to perform, and reunited an All-Pro linebacker with the defensive coordinator who made him one of the best players in the NFL, and traded for a starting right tackle before the legal tampering window that even officially opened, Jerome Ford was not the story anyone was writing. He was the running back, the fifth-round pick, the backup, the guy who stepped in when Nick Chubb went down and produced 813 yards and 9 touchdowns in 2023, and gave Cleveland fans something genuine to be excited about in a season that desperately needed something genuine. He was the guy who ran 66 yards on the Browns' first play from scrimmage against the Bengals in 2024, before anyone in the stadium had fully settled into their seats. He was the guy who took a Joe Flacco heave down the field on Thursday Night Football against the Jets and somehow turned it into a 50-yard touchdown that should not have been possible given where the ball was thrown and where Jerome Ford was standing when it left Flacco's hand. He was the guy who carried the football 247 times over 4 seasons in Cleveland, who scored 12 touchdowns in 2 years, who was a weapon in the passing game at a position where passing game production is the difference between a complementary piece and a genuine offensive asset. He was never the star. He was always the player you needed him to be. And on the morning of Saturday, March 14, 2026, the Cleveland Browns watched Jerome Ford sign a 1-year contract with the Washington Commanders, the first offensive player to leave Cleveland in this free agency period. The running back who had been with this franchise since the 5th round of the 2022 draft, the same draft that gave the Browns Jack Conklin's final healthy season and Wyatt Teller's final Pro Bowl push, and the last remnants of the offensive identity that produced 2 legitimate playoff runs before everything collapsed under the weight of Deshaun Watson's guaranteed money and a coaching staff that could not survive what came next. Jerome Ford is in Washington, and the Cleveland Browns, who spent the first week of free agency adding the most impressive collection of offensive line talent assembled in a single off-season period in recent franchise history, are now running back one of the most important players in their ground game rebuild. The team that hired Todd Monken to replicate the most dominant rushing attack in the NFL is now going to try to do it without the man who led them in rushing yards the last time this offense had any identity at all. This is the complete story of Jerome Ford, where he came from, what he built in Cleveland, why he left, and what it means for everything the Browns are trying to accomplish in 2026. Jerome Antavius Ford was born September 12, 1999 in Tampa, Florida. He grew up in the kind of football culture that the state of Florida produces at a higher rate than almost anywhere else in the country. The Friday night games under lights in weather that never gets cold enough to stop the season, the high school programs that compete at a national level, the pipeline from Florida prep football to major college programs that has produced more NFL players than any state outside of Texas. Ford attended Armwood High School in Seffner, Florida, a public school in Hillsborough County whose football program has won multiple state championships and produced NFL players with a consistency that reflects both the talent of the players and the quality of the coaching. He was a 4-star recruit by every major service. ESPN ranked him the 8th best all-purpose back in the entire country. 247 Sports ranked him 225th nationally, a top-tier prospect whose combination of speed, vision, and receiving ability out of the backfield made him attractive to programs across the country. He received offers from Florida, Florida State, Miami, Alabama, Auburn, and dozens of others. He chose Alabama. And in Tuscaloosa, under the most demanding football infrastructure in college athletics, he learned something that every player who goes to Alabama learns. The roster is deep, the competition is relentless, and patience is not optional. It is the only available strategy when you are behind players who are also first-round NFL talent. Ford played 2 seasons at Alabama, 2018 and 2019, with limited opportunity. As a freshman in 2018, he appeared in 4 games and accumulated 37 yards on 7 carries. As a sophomore in 2019, he played in 4 games and had 114 yards on 24 carries with 3 touchdowns. Modest numbers. Expected numbers for a player behind Najee Harris and Brian Robinson Jr. and the depth of talent that Nick Saban assembled in Tuscaloosa year after year. He was getting better. He was learning, but he was not getting the opportunity his ability deserved. And in the spring of 2020, he made the decision that changed everything. He transferred to the University of Cincinnati. At Cincinnati, under head coach Luke Fickell, Jerome Ford walked into an offense that needed him and a program that was building towards something none of its previous classes had achieved. In 2020, as the backup to Jared Dokes, Ford rushed for 483 yards on 73 carries with 8 touchdowns, extraordinary numbers for a backup in a program at the Group of 5 level. And in 2021, as the starter, he became the engine of the most significant season in Cincinnati Bearcats football history. 1,242 rushing yards, 20 rushing touchdowns, 20 total touchdowns. Both marks set school single-season records. The Bearcats went 13-0 in the regular season, undefeated, and became the first Group of 5 program in the history of the college football playoff to earn a semifinal berth. Jerome Ford ran for 97 yards and a 79-yard touchdown against Georgia in the Peach Bowl semifinal. Against Georgia, against a defense that finished that season ranked among the 2 or 3 best in the country and that went on to win the national championship the following year. Jerome Ford, a backup from Alabama who had transferred to Cincinnati, ran for 97 yards against Georgia's national championship defense. That performance, combined with the 40-second 40-yard dash he ran at the NFL Scouting Combine, converted the skeptics. The Cleveland Browns selected him with the 156th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, 5th round. The same draft where they were building the offensive line that would become for a few seasons one of the best in the league. Ford arrived in Cleveland as the 3rd running back on the depth chart behind Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. He was going to learn. He was going to contribute on special teams, and when his moment came, when the injuries that haunt every NFL running back eventually created the opportunity, he was going to be ready.
His rookie season in 2022 was almost entirely lost to an ankle injury sustained in Week 4 against the Atlanta Falcons that placed him on injured reserve. He returned for the final 3 weeks and managed to contribute at a basic level, mostly special teams, as expected for a 5th-round rookie in his first year. In 2023, with Nick Chubb suffering the most devastating injury of his career, a torn ACL, MCL, and PCL in Week 2 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Jerome Ford became the Cleveland Browns' starting running back 11 days into his sophomore season. He was not ready in the sense that anyone plans for a transition of that magnitude under those circumstances, but he was ready in the only sense that matters in the NFL. He was prepared. He had studied the playbook. He had learned the blocking schemes. He had built the receiving route tree that had made him valuable to Cincinnati's spread offense. And when Chubb went down and the Browns needed someone to carry the offense in a season that still somehow produced a playoff berth, Ford gave them 813 rushing yards on 204 carries with 4 rushing touchdowns. He added 319 receiving yards on 47 receptions with 5 receiving touchdowns, 1,132 yards of total offense, 9 total touchdowns, in a season where the team had lost its franchise running back 3 weeks in and was being held together by Joe Flacco, a 40-year-old quarterback acquired off the street. Jerome Ford ran and caught the football with a consistency and a quality that the Browns had no right to expect from their 3rd-round pick. He earned a legitimate role, he earned the team's confidence, and he earned the contract conversation that every young NFL player earns when they outperform their draft position in a way the organization cannot ignore. 2024 was the next chapter. Chubb returned from his knee surgery, a recovery that every medical professional who watched described as remarkable, and the Browns' running back room was suddenly loaded again. Ford averaged only 5.3 yards per carry in 2024 and had fewer opportunities with Chubb healthy, but he produced the moments that remind you why the NFL cannot function without depth. The 66-yard burst on the first play from scrimmage against Cincinnati in Week 16, the one that made the entire stadium collectively exhale and say, "Oh right, this guy can run." The 50-yard touchdown reception from Flacco against the Jets on Thursday Night Football that no route tree or blocking scheme fully explains, and that comes down to the fact that Jerome Ford runs routes well enough that an accurate throw can become something extraordinary. The kick returns, the third down catches, the quiet, consistent professionalism of a player who does his job without demanding attention and whose absence is always felt more than his presence is celebrated. And then 2025 happened. Playing behind two rookies, Ford had just 176 yards of total offense in 2025 and did not score a touchdown after scoring 12 total touchdowns in the previous 2 seasons. Yahoo Sports: 176 yards, 0 touchdowns, in a season where the offense around him was so dysfunctional, the quarterback carousel, the offensive line injuries, the receiver room that ranked 31st in passing yards, that no running back could have produced consistently regardless of their talent level. Ford was buried, not by his own performance, but by the circumstances surrounding him. And when the Browns hired Todd Monken and began rebuilding the offensive line and assembled the pieces of what Monken describes as a run-first system built on physical dominance at the point of attack, the system he built in Baltimore around Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, Ford's opportunity should have expanded. He should have been the experienced, versatile, proven running back around whom Monken could begin installing the ground game he envisions. The Washington Commanders have signed 1,100-yard running back Jerome Ford to a 1-year deal, as confirmed by Ian Rappaport. He leaves Cleveland after 4 seasons. Yahoo Sports: Washington, not Cleveland, not the team that drafted him, not the team that gave him the opportunity when Chubb went down, not the team that is now building the offensive line and the run game philosophy that most closely resembles the environment where Ford's specific skills, the receiving ability out of the backfield, the vision in space, the speed that registered a 4.46 at the combine, would be maximized. He is in Washington 1 year because the Browns did not make an offer significant enough to keep him, because the rebuild, despite everything Barry has done on the offensive line, did not include a contract for the running back who was the most experienced, most proven, most versatile offensive weapon on the roster, not named Myles Garrett.
So far, just 2 defenders had departed the Browns' 2025 roster. Linebacker Devin Bush to the Chicago Bears, defensive end Cameron Thomas to the Atlanta Falcons. And now Ford becomes the first offensive player to leave Cleveland in the 2026 free agency period. Yardbarker's the first offensive departure, and the specific position he played, running back in a run-first offense under a head coach whose entire system depends on the ground game creating the conditions for everything else, is the position where his absence is most immediately felt. Todd Monken's Baltimore offense led the NFL in rushing yards in 2023. It produced what many analysts called the most physically dominant ground game in the modern era, and it did so with a combination of elite offensive line play and depth at running back. Not just a featured back, but a rotation, multiple players capable of carrying the ball effectively and catching it out of the backfield, capable of making the defense account for them at every level of the field. Jerome Ford was the one proven receiving back on the Cleveland roster. He was the one running back who had actually caught 50 passes in a single season for this team, who had shown in meaningful NFL games that he could be trusted on third down, that a defensive coordinator had to put a linebacker or a safety in man coverage against him and accept the mismatch that created. And he is gone to Washington for 1 year. Because the Browns, who spent $17.8 million in unexpected cap adjustment money on Friday morning, apparently decided that the running back position was not where that money needed to go. The replacement options are real, but unproven.
Nick Chubb, at 30 years old and coming off 2 ACL surgeries in 2 years, remains on the roster and remains the kind of physical between-the-tackles runner that Todd Monken's system requires when the game is on the line and the defense knows the ball is going to the running back. When healthy, Chubb is one of the best in the sport at what he does. But healthy is the operative word, and Chubb's medical history over the last 2 years has made every projection about his availability speculative rather than confident. Dante Foreman is a veteran option who provides experience and physicality as a change-of-pace complement. The Browns signed Kalia Davis as a defensive lineman and re-signed cornerback Trey Avery as depth pieces this week, adding without addressing the running back position directly. And the draft, 40 days away, includes running backs at every level of the class, from the premium prospects at the top, who will go in the first 2 rounds, to the developmental options in the later rounds who could be developed over time. But development takes time, and the 2026 Cleveland Browns, the team that Todd Monken is trying to build into a legitimate playoff contender in his first season, do not have time. They have Shedeur Sanders at quarterback with an asterisk on his depth chart position, and a left tackle situation that is still unresolved, and a wide receiver room that lost Mike Evans to San Francisco before it ever had him. They have every possible reason to need the running game to work from week 1 because the passing game is going to need time to develop, and the defense needs to be the foundation until it does. And they have, as of Saturday morning, March 14th, 2026, one proven featured back who has had 2 surgeries in 2 years, and a depth chart at running back that does not include the most reliable, most versatile, most proven receiving back who wore a Cleveland Browns uniform in the last 3 seasons. Jerome Ford is in Washington. The Browns are moving forward without him. And the question that the next 40 days have to answer, the draft, the remaining free agent market, and the decisions Barry makes with the $17.8 million in unexpected cap space on Friday morning, is whether moving forward without Ford is a calculated decision that reflects confidence in what is coming, or an oversight that will cost this team points and possessions in September, when the run game needs to function and the depth behind Nick Chubb is thinner than it was the day the league year began. All reporting in this broadcast is sourced from ESPN, Yahoo Sports, Dogs by Nature, Heavy Sports, Pro Football Reference, Grokpedia, the official Cleveland Browns website roster and transaction pages, the University of Cincinnati Athletics official website, the official NFL transaction wire, and confirmed reporting from Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, and John Keem. All information reflects confirmed reporting as of March 14, 2026.